That's right, ladies and gentlemen. We are back. It is the 19th episode of the No Name Cinema Society, and from the music, you can probably tell we're here to talk this first segment about Spectre, the 24th Bond film ever, and it just opened this past weekend in theaters. And I feel like the first thing I got to do is turn this music down because it's distracting. It's a neat idea, but it's over now. And I hope it got you as pumped as it got me. I want to take this initial segment to say hello to all of our new Twitter and Facebook followers. We've had a lot of new followers in the last couple weeks, and we're very grateful. We want to say hello. Thanks for watching. And those of you that are interacting with us on Facebook, we're very excited by that. And we just posted some photos of our trip to the Vista Theater here in LA for our trip to see Spectre. So you can see some of those photos on Facebook right now. It was just me and a bunch of people I knew out here. I have some friends. Unfortunately, my cohorts don't have as friends, so we don't have photos from their trips. So let me introduce you to my co-hosts here tonight and every night that we do this. Let's start out with your favorite hater. Ladies and gentlemen, it's J Money. How are you doing tonight, J Money?
Cheers, JB. Or should I say B, JB?
Oh, well, yeah. Well, that might have been worse than my theme song opening.
And I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt by actually naming you Bond in the situation. You should be nothing but grateful.
That's true.
Absolutely grateful.
And I didn't realize every time this fades, we're going to give some advertising to DirecTV, owned by AT&T. I didn't intend for that to happen, but regardless, we're going to now introduce the Count of Charlotte, our in-house counsel, and the absolute worst fantasy football player of all time. Here is Dave Joseph.
Yeah, well, it's Stafford. Stafford just sucks, man. And I guess even when he doesn't play, he's a little better, I guess, when he doesn't play. So,
yeah, you realize you started him this week, and he was on his bye.
No, I know, and I don't care anymore because my team is horrible, and I didn't want to. I'm not gonna let people have to preserve the integrity of the league. I'm not going to just give up quarterbacks, but on the other hand, I'm not going to waste one that someone else needs either. So that's sort of my thinking there.
You use a 20-sided die for that? Is that how that works?
That's right.
That's probably how he drafted his team, actually. So I mean, something that's kind of fun about tonight is, I mean, like, it's to think about the legacy of Bond, and maybe it's something we're talking about tonight. We're definitely going to talk about our sound off when I get to count down my top 5 Bond films of all time. But I mean, this is the most venerable franchise in film history. I don't think there's any argument about it. It's been 53 years since Dr. No, the first Bond, and 24 films, and this is the 4th one with Daniel Craig. And so I'm really excited to talk about it with these guys. Quick little summary of what happened in this latest Bond. Our favorite British spy is back trying to find out who ultimately is behind the events of the last 3 films. And just as before, the very existence of the 00 franchise, 007 program is under scrutiny from the British government, which seems to be a theme, certainly the last couple films. So let's start opening thoughts. And J Money, why don't you start us off?
Okay, I would say, and I'm no great expert on Bond, but just in general, it was a competent entry into the Bond franchise, but it was very basic Bond. It did not seem to distinguish itself from me.
Okay, Davie Joe.
Yeah, I don't know. The movie was it was exciting. There were action sequences that I don't see how anyone could ever really complain about. I thought the performances were solid as well, but I don't know why I didn't love it. I didn't love it. I'll tell you that.
Well, and I'm one of the few that did not enjoy Skyfall. And my thoughts on Skyfall are extremely parallel with my thoughts on this one, in that the first 2 acts were outstanding and exciting, and then there's a huge plot point that is so extremely bad that it derails the whole movie for me, and it's an unnecessary plot point. So before we get, I want to talk about that. Obviously, that's a huge opening. But before we get to that, I've got a surprise for you guys.
Okay.
So let's start with this. Hopefully, this will work.
I went in with the idea that it was just going to be an action-packed, nonsensical movie, and it lived up to everything I expected.
Oh, okay.
Because my expectations were so low.
Yes.
And because I don't like to get my expectations up high for these really big budget action. But I did like the score, but I didn't like that you didn't get it bloody at all. So that was kind of weird. Clean crash, no blood.
Okay, and one more.
The train sequence.
Oh, sorry, wrong clip.
I mean, it didn't break any molds and really do anything that was surprising. I thought it had a couple opportunities too, but I think it was solid Bond movie. Nothing that stands out from the rest, but really cool set pieces. I think that's probably some of the coolest I've seen in a Bond movie.
Well, I totally disagree, but I do think there were some cool set pieces. Like we were just talking about, the train sequence was great.
All right, guys. So there's some of our fans reaching out and having some thoughts. How do you guys respond to that?
I feel like I should go hang out with our fans more. It sounds like I agree with our fans more than you, generally speaking.
Hello. Are you guys there?
I'm here. Are you here?
All right. Well, I am here. So we'll wait till JB gets back. But I agree with the point about the set pieces. I thought the sets were excellent. The movie looked good. I don't know. I think it's that there's a level of complexity to the.
Oh, there he is.
I've been here. It's you guys that went out.
Gonna have to disagree with you there.
Okay.
We can hear each other. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I was the one being broadcast, but we'll determine that.
Probably. That's usually how it works.
One can hope so.
Did you guys hear any? Did you guys hear any of that audio?
Oh no. I heard all the audio.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. How do you guys respond to some of our fans who had some things to say?
We have intelligent fans, and that's really reassuring to find out. It's good. It's good to hear that.
Do you have anything specific that you caught on, that you glommed onto from that?
I do believe that at least one of those people was echoing almost exactly what I was saying when we started this conversation, so that's good for me. It's nice to know that there is somebody that might agree with me on occasion, because it's definitely not you, JB, so somebody else does.
Well, most of the time we agree, we just argue about how.
Yeah, well, yeah.
David, Joe, what do you think about those two sound clips?
No, I was saying before, I don't know if it went over the air or not. I thought that the point about the set pieces was right on. I thought that the sets definitely were interesting, and the movie looked good. In
fairness, I think the set pieces they're referring to are actually like the stunt sequences.
I'll tell you the one that sticks in my head is involves the airplane in the barn. But I don't know how much of that we want to talk about. But I thought that was really cool.
Well, I mean, I can say that one of the things that I thought was a big plus for the film was, I mean, this is a film that I think could really give Mad Max a run for its money. If they did and should, they, especially given this year, have an Oscar category for stunt choreography. That element of the film I think was outstanding. The viewers that on that audio piece there, they singled out the train sequence. You're singling out the plane sequence. J Money, did you have a particular favorite, or did you not like the stunts by chance?
Yeah, actually I didn't. I was actually going to bring up the point that I thought a lot of the action sequences in this film were kind of hollow and didn't really play out the way that I would have liked them to. So on a whole, I actually kind of disagree with the general point about the action in this movie. Sorry. I don't feel like anything really came of a lot of stuff. I mean, we can go through different sequences. I will say that I did actually quite enjoy the train sequence. That's probably the only sequence I can think of that I thought came to a satisfying conclusion, or at least had a satisfying amount of action that actually involved in it. A lot of the other stunt sequences to me were just sort of like a lot of frump and a lot of play, but nothing really actually happened in them. So
Well, I mean, and the train sequence I don't like as much because it's sort of it's like I was not satisfied by the way it concluded. If we're talking about the same conclusion, with the rope, and I don't want to give too much away.
Well,
but,
I don't want to. I guess maybe not from a conceptual point of view, but just in the fact that people actually hit each other. That's kind of what I'm referring to.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. I'm with Davie Joe about the plane sequence. And also, like the opening, I mean, from a staging and directing and cinematography point of view, the opening in Mexico City was outstanding.
I'll agree with that one, definitely. Yeah.
So let's get to this larger issue that I mentioned earlier, and that is the overall script issues. And I'm going to tread very carefully in the sense that I don't want to give anything away, because the fact of the matter is my issues with the film sort of center around things that come out in the movie, and so the way I'm going to talk about it now is I feel like the last two films, the need to personalize the mission for Bond feels off-brand and unnecessary, and in this case, out and out ridiculous. To the point where when the spoiler comes out, I mean, like the plot twist or whatever comes out, and I saw it coming, I think, early in the movie, and when it comes out, I want to throw up my hands and and facepalm or something. So that is at the core of my frustration with this film. Without giving it away, where are you guys on that?
I agree with that 1,000%. I think it's bizarre and it's unnecessary, especially when you're talking about someone who's sort of fighting for the greater good in both a patriotic sense and just a sort of moral sense. You don't need the whole personalization of it. It's weird and it's not. It's so unbelievable that it's just not. It's not necessary and it's a distraction.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because James Bond, with some exceptions, and we can talk about this at the sound off later when I do the top 5. But there is a certain element of silliness that is part of the franchise that it's almost accepted. And I'm thinking about things like each actor that's played Bond, towards the end of their tenure, the films would start to get silly, like Thunderball for Sean Connery, Moonraker, and A View to Kill and Octopussy for Roger Moore, and all of the Pierce Brosnan ones. But it was accepted. It was part of its charm to some degree. Now, I don't mind making the character more serious or anything like that, but this takes it almost too far. I mean, it's a different kind of silliness and less forgivable. J-Money, you've been quiet.
Well, I guess what I would say is that I don't disagree with what you're saying about this particular instance. I mean, the plot point to me felt kind of tacked on. It felt kind of unnecessary for them to go in that direction. But I guess what I would say is that I think that in general, the team behind Daniel Craig and his interpretation of this Bond is about them infusing it with a little bit more personal sort of problems. Just in general, it feels like
that's totally fine. I don't mind the brooding hero, and I like the first two films that he did, and I'm the only one that likes Quantum of Solace. But and Quantum of Solace was almost like the template in the sense that it's not really personal much at all. There's some little hangover about the Vesper Lynn thing in Quantum of Solace, but it's a mission, and he does it, and he's still brooding and all that stuff, but without the mission, this other mission, needing to tie into his personal life.
Right. Well, but the thing is, for me, I don't know if I've ever really completely bought into some of the logic they had in terms of creating, pathos for this guy in this whole section of Daniel Craig stuff. Ultimately, they're trying to showcase that he is the engineer of his own loss. I guess ultimately they're trying to say that he is trying to deal with being unable to, sort of form these emotional attachments. And it's kind of, I think, their way of explaining away some of the chauvinism and misogyny that's usually, connected with the character in general. I just don't think that they're actually ever really coming through on that promise. I feel like, to your point, the big emotional sort of turning point and the plot point in this version was really kind of, hammy. It really didn't fit with everything else. I would say it's kind of the same thing that they did in previous films as well. I mean, as much as it doesn't necessarily ruin the movie for me.
Well, I mean, I will say again, this is more about legacy, but the previous two films, in all of the Bonds from the very beginning, there was always talk of one woman that he yearned for, a wife that he lost, and that was like that was always part of the backstory. So
it was part of the backstory, but it wasn't a crucial part to the way that he was actually performing his role.
Vesper Lind, in her presence in Casino Royale and the ghost of the presence of her ghost, if you will, that hung over Quantum of Solace, that matched the legacy of the character. Whereas
no, I understand that.
This plot twist turns it on its head in an almost unforgivable way.
Well, what I'm saying is that ultimately I find the execution of both of those ideas relatively tacky, the way that they've handled them so far. So what I'm going to round back to is I'm going to say, like, yeah, I agree with your point about how this plot point, this twist, was pretty ridiculous. On the other hand, it doesn't necessarily ruin how the whole movies work for me, because I don't think any of them have really been that well handled. You know, I never fully buy any of his relationships that he's developed with these women in these movies.
But they're putting this in this, like, they're making it more serious and more grounded somehow, and then this plot twist comes in. It doesn't match the overall brand of Bond, and then it doesn't match their reboot brand. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't fit with, like, it's so ridiculous. It doesn't fit within this concept that they're trying to accomplish.
No, I agree on that on a whole. You know, I guess ultimately I would say it just felt like they were out of ideas. This movie just, to me, felt like they were really out of ideas.
Without this plot twist, the movie would have been fine without it. Like, it did not need it. You know what I mean? Like, it had no real impact on anything.
Absolutely, but I also feel like there was nothing that interesting in the movie otherwise anyway. I mean, I don't think either of these things were that interesting, is what I'm saying.
I was somewhat, I mean, like, I've always been, like, I was excited by the idea of getting to know Spectre again, like, of the rise of Spectre. That, you know, even
Sure.
and again, we're going to talk about that when we talk about our top 5 at the end of the night, at 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Pacific. But the rise of Spectre, I was excited by that concept. So, I mean, like, that's why the first 2 acts I was engaged, because I felt it coming, and then it was such a letdown.
It was a massive letdown. That sequence in the desert was really an empty, hollow experience for me.
Yeah. I don't want to say too much more, but for sure. So in terms of other script problems, let's turn our attention to the Bond girl or love story for a second. And I've got another clip to play for you guys from one of our fans, if I can find the right moment. And here we go.
Bond girl was like, her part was just lame. Like, she didn't have like a lot to do. They made a big deal about her like kind of being a badass, and then like not much payoff.
And I kind of want to add to that and saying, so that's all true, but also, like, she was so resistant to him, and, you know, when Vesper and he fell in love, it was very, very, you know, you felt it over time. This was like almost 1930s kind of love, which we can talk about in our classic Grand Hotel, where it just happens so quickly, and that was another place where I broke away. You know, the suspension of disbelief was just too much for me. Davie, you've been quiet. What do you think?
Well, the clip was a really good point, because I definitely thought they were sort of setting it up to where I was going to see her, you know, kind of work with him and be, you know, maybe like a partner and not necessarily, you know, like the helpless person that he was protecting, and I didn't feel like I got that. I didn't feel like they paid that off, and I'm wondering if maybe they tried and it didn't work, and maybe she's just not cut out for the action sequences like that, or it just was me reading into it something that was never intended in the first place. But it disappointed me, and it bothered me.
J Money.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I was trying to say before. I've never, going back to what you said about Vesper, I didn't quite buy into the whole Vesper situation either. To me, that happened really too quickly, and it happened halfway through the movie. You know, in general, I would have to say that the problem with Bond is that any of the actual relationships he forms with women that are serious usually happen in, like, the second half of the second act, right, for the most part?
Well, they're frequently not that serious, but yes, I would.
They're not that serious, which is okay, because then they're not that serious. In the newer versions, it is him creating these great love stories in like 30 minutes after an hour of movie, and I've never really been able to put those two things together in my head. It just didn't ever seem to jive. So this version specifically was by far the worst of everything we've seen. I mean, okay, his great love is Vesper, great. In this one, it's like literally she goes from absolutely hating him to throwing herself at him in, I don't know, 15 minutes maybe total. I mean, it's a really ridiculous amount of screen time. And also, I mean, just to echo what everyone else is saying, she was a completely just a thrown away character. She was set dressing at most. I mean, she had a lot of potential. She had a lot of promise.
Actor. I mean, and a waste of a very talented actor in that regard. I don't know if you guys have seen Blue is the Warmest Color or anything else that she's done in France. I mean, Davie Joe's probably seen her in Mission Impossible: Ghost Protocol, but I mean, like, she was amazing in Blue is the Warmest Color. It's an amazing film, even though it's 3 hours. But she's a very talented actor, and it was a waste of her.
It was a waste of her, and it's really unfortunate because I as much as we might disagree about Skyfall, JB, because I actually really like Skyfall, I think that there were actually really well done, monumental female figures in that, like M. But in this movie, it just seemed like it was a step backwards for them with dealing with that kind of stuff. It was just her being there in the frame to be saved, which was really kind of depressing ultimately.
Well, I don't want to get too much on Skyfall, but I mean, like, that random, like, Chinese woman in Skyfall that's, like, under... Yeah. I mean, like, that you think she's a well-developed character?
No, there's always really poor characters that are in all... I mean, like, there was in this movie, even besides her, there was Monica Bellucci, who's in and out for 10 minutes and pointlessly there.
And slept with him on at the day of her husband.
Literally 30 seconds into a scene, she's like, yeah, I'm ready. This is going to happen now.
That was bad.
That was absolutely ridiculous.
All right, so there's some other topics to talk about here, and we have very little time, less than 5 minutes. So let me give you guys a choice here. Okay. Actually, no, I'm not going to give you a choice. Let's start with cinematography. It's just too much to give you a choice right now. One of my issues with cinematography, one of my issues with Skyfall was the cinematography. It was gorgeous, but it was gorgeous in a forced way. Roger Deakins, one of the 3 great cinematographers living today, shot Skyfall. It was it looked great, but I mean, like, I feel like the scenes and sequences in Skyfall were set up to look great. And like, for example, in Skyfall, like the flare underneath the frozen water, you know what I mean, and the fighting in Shanghai with the lights, silhouetting the characters. It was so staged around the cinematography in what felt like in a natural way. I liked this cinematography because it was still beautiful in a less forced way. And this isn't the best photo. It's not coming out great on the screen, but this is part of the Mexico City sequence, which opens with one long shot, which is really impressive. And also, what this photo doesn't show you is it's about to pan right and see tons and tons of real-life, non-digital extras, which also I think was very impressive, and which is one of the reasons why I was very excited for the first couple acts of this throughout the first couple acts of this movie. So real quick, cinematography, Davie Joe.
No, I liked it a lot. I think that part of the desert scenes and the way that they shot the big explosion it definitely struck me as being something that was above and beyond normal.
J Money.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you can call out the opening sequence in the movie for good reason. It's a really impressive sequence. It lost me by the end of the whole setup in general. By the time they get to the square with the helicopter, but ultimately that set the tone for me in a way that I think maybe like heightened my expectations, so that it just didn't live up to it for the rest of the movie for me.
Yeah, I mean, but what about the cinematography overall? And do you see what my point is about the forced cinematography in Skyfall versus this one, which felt natural and still looked good by Hoyt van Hoytema?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I never felt distracted by it in Skyfall, so I don't think I have quite the same constructive criticism that you do. But ultimately, I agree with your assessment here. I think that the cinematography here overall was quite impressive.
Okay, and the last thing that I wanted to talk about was the sound. Not the sound, the song. See if you guys had any thoughts about the opening song. Part of the Bond franchise. What do you guys think? J Money, you were nodding.
I thought that it went on too long in an uncomfortable way. It's like I like the Bond stuff, I like the opening sequences in general, just from a design point of view, because they're always so ridiculous and over the top. and I like watching them for maybe 30 seconds. But when they go into like a 2.5-minute range, and I'm sitting there uncomfortably next to all these 40 to 50-year-olds looking at these sexy bodies, it just didn't quite gel. There was sort of a silence that overtook the theater in a way that I think felt really weird. I just think in general the song could have been edited and it could have been a little bit less overly dramatic.
Davey?
I liked it. It set the tone for me. But I'll tell you what, it's almost like I liked it in an ironic way, because it's kind of, there's definitely some cheese dumped on that. So
yeah.
And here's what I think you're responding to, and I think it's Sam Smith. I think the song was really written well and seemed to fit, but some of his vocal choices seemed to belie the foreboding of the music, and also just his voice in general didn't I understand why they chose him. It was, from a marketing point of view, is the perfect choice. He's
Sure.
right on in that regard, but like Adele's deep bassy, woman bassy, I guess alto-y it was what that would be, but her voice, her rich voice matched the tones in Skyfall, whereas here it seemed like a mismatch, and at certain points he made some choices that go really high, which undercut, I thought, what was going on with the lyrics. So that was my thought about the song in general.
Yeah, I'll buy that.
All right, guys, we better wrap it up. We haven't passed the buzzer yet, but I wanted to talk about Bond
Uh-oh.
no,
Yeah.
he's gone.
Here
Well,
we
hey,
are again. Just hang out in purgatory.
well, let me talk about how much I like Dave Bautista. How
Okay,
great
go
was he,
on.
man? I don't know. Did you see Guardians of the Galaxy?
Yes.
Yeah, he was in that too. And I thought he was.
Wait, who was he in that?
He was.
Bond films of all time.
Oh, there we go.
So that's very exciting. And also, next week, our current film for discussion is going to be November 23rd. And we're going to talk about another franchise here, the final installment of the Hunger Games, Mockingjay Part 2. And in order to get ready for that, Davie Joe, who has not seen any of the films, is going to watch all 3 in the next 2 weeks. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So I'm curious. We're going to wind up talking about the whole franchise, probably. Maybe that'll be an hour-long episode. So that's November 23rd, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, and I will be in New York at the time. This is my last night in L.A. for 2015. That's why I'm decked out in L.A. wear. So anyway, thank you, our viewers. We're going to come back in 3 to 4 minutes, and we're going to talk about our indie spotlight of the evening, and that's going to be Noah Baumbach's Greenberg, and that's coming up very shortly. All right, guys, we'll see you on the flip side.